if this city succeeds, it paves the way for how a city could be built on minimum taxes, where every service provided by those taxes is actually there for you and not for the benefit of some government bureaucrat. Everyone in that city could be replaced because it's run like a company. Everybody can be fired. The taxes are mostly voluntary, and these taxes are there. You're going to want to pay them. And you're not forced to live there.
Yeah. Tone, we finally are going to get to sit down and chat. Last time you were in Zonte, and you couldn't pull away from your girlfriend long enough for us to be able to.
I know. No, it's tricky when you're at these events, and the more people there are, it's impossible. Like if I'm listening to a speaker in one stage, and I want to go listen to a different speaker on a different stage, I'll never get there. It'll take me like an hour. You get stopped, you get recognized everywhere. You probably have the same problem now here at these events.
Well,
people start to recognize you.
I found if you just pretend like you're on the phone while you're walking, then people are less likely.
I know, my face is too unique. You know, I get recognized too easily.
Well, we are here at actually the Adopting Bitcoin conference. That's why we have a little different backdrop here. So thanks to Paco and Andy for setting up this great setup. But I'm looking forward to actually learning a little bit more about your Bitcoin story, and then hearing about the Unconfiscatable conference that you run and how that came about. Because to be honest, I only know bits and pieces about your story. So
about my journey to Bitcoin.
Yeah. So would love to hear that. We'll dive right in. How did Bitcoin kind of move into your life, and then what happened to lead you on the path to do the conference and the other things?
So just like with everyone, you hear about Bitcoin at least a year before you get in. Usually it's somewhere between 1 year and 2 years, unless you're stubborn like a Peter Schiff, and then it's never. But for most people, if it catches your attention, and then a year later it does it again, and then you start taking it seriously. So for me, Bitcoin caught my attention for the first time when I heard Max Keiser talk about it in terms of WikiLeaks using it as payments because they were about to be deplatformed because they were no longer able to take donations through Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, and all registered means of payment. So that's when I heard about Bitcoin for the first time. And the reason I found Max Keiser is because in 2011, I was following the Ron Paul campaign for President of the United States. And ironically, the only channel that was following Ron Paul's speeches was Russia Today. As ironic as that sounds, that's where you had to go to watch a candidate for US presidency because the US media was not covering the Ron Paul campaign.
Hey guys, just a brief interruption. We'll get back to the exciting show here, but I just want to really ask a favor that you guys could make sure that you're subscribed if you're watching this on YouTube. If you are listening to this on a podcast, please take a second and review this. You don't even have to write a lengthy review or anything at all. Just click the number of stars that you want to give us. It really helps us in the algorithms to make sure people are finding out about what's happening here. All right, back to the show.
So that brought me to RT. That caught my attention was Max Keiser's show, but the show that I found that I was watching more often was called Capital Account on RT. Those that remember from a decade ago, maybe, remember the show Capital Account and the Keiser report from RT.
Was Max like was he orange pilled at that time? Because I know we started the Keiser report before Bitcoin was really a big component of it.
Oh yeah, no. So he was a full-blown Bitcoiner, but at that time there were no altcoins, right? So he were Bitcoin only, right? So that's when I heard about it, the WikiLeaks use case, which is a use case for censorship-resistant value transfer. Because I'm going to talk about 3 specific use cases of Bitcoin. That was the censorship-resistant value transfer use case of Bitcoin. Now, I found it intriguing, I found it interesting, and I remember Googling Bitcoin in 2012, and everything that came up was mining. I'm working Wall Street, I'm working, like 10-hour days. I have to commute an hour to get to the city to work because I was saving money. I was, I don't know, my background is, let me back up here. I was born in the Soviet Union. I grew up in a communist country. I was basically, struggling, broke my whole life. I mean, we did okay as a family, but I remember working when I was 10 years old, not going to school while we were refugees coming to America. And then starting at 13 years old, I was working. My first job was doing dishes, mopping floors at an ice cream shop through high school. Then in college, I always had two jobs. One of those jobs was driving like the safety van, so the people don't have to walk across campus. It was mostly for like girls not to have to walk alone. And that job was till like 2, 3 in the morning every night. Then I'd come home. Then I would study for my classes. And so I've always just been a hard worker and a saver. So when I had my Wall Street job and I'm making 80, 90 grand to start, and then over 100 grand, I'm not paying $5,000 for a Manhattan apartment. But I just can't. I can't get myself to do it. So I'm saving money. I want to buy a property. I want to buy my house, buy an apartment. So I don't have time to deal with Bitcoin mining. So I never got in. And then in 2013, something changed. The next time it caught my attention, it really caught my attention. Those were the Cyprus banking confiscations of 2013. It was April of 2013. You remember that time?
Yep.
Where the European Union and Cyprus decided to confiscate 50% of everyone's wealth in their bank accounts above 100,000 euros. And they did nothing wrong. These were people that had money at the bank. And I had over $100,000 saved in my bank account in the US. And I saw that, and I'm like, holy shit, how can that happen? That changed my entire view. I mean, again, I was already following Ron Paul. I was already moving into this libertarian kind of thought process. Because 7 years of college liberal education. And I went to the most liberal schools possible. And I also grew up in New York. So literally high school in New York, college in upstate New York, and probably the most liberal colleges. And then Florida State for grad school, which is the most liberal district of Florida, Tallahassee, Florida. That's the district that was overwhelmingly votes Democrat. So that's a lot of brainwashing into the liberal mindset. And so that one really caught me. And I'm like, what do you mean they can just confiscate your money? And after that, that's when I started taking Bitcoin seriously. And of course, I pick up my first sats at the 2013 top, at the bubble, like everybody does.
You got to buy at the top your first time.
Right, is that?
You got to buy at the top your first time.
Oh, of course, right? Most people got into the 2017 top. I ended up at that 2013 top. And then I watch it fall, down to $200, down to $150. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, what's happening here? But I had a couple of expertise. So one is, I've been an educator my whole life. My initial college education was actually in teaching. I was a high school teacher for a year. Besides my job of driving drunk people till 2 in the morning, my other job was tutoring. And then I was doing that. I was a college professor for a little bit after my master's degree because I couldn't find that Wall Street job. So I'm really good at teaching. I really like public speaking and standing on stage. And I was now working Wall Street for almost 10 years. Well, at that time in 2014-15, I was only working Wall Street for 6 years. And
what were you doing?
I was on the quant team building risk models for traders.
Okay.
But I was also a trader on the side. Actually, no, in 2014, I started working on Wall Street in late 2016, 2006, early 2007. So in 2014, I was 7, 8 years in. And I really started reading about Bitcoin, following everything about Bitcoin. And I attended my first conference in New York in 2014. It was called Inside Bitcoins. That was the only company that was going around the world doing Bitcoin conferences. And I sat in the front row and I asked really good questions that got noticed by a couple of people in the audience that had podcasts. And they thought I was important based on how I presented myself. So they invited me on these podcasts without knowing that I'm just, a guy that attended, asked questions. But those couple of interviews created a little bit of a social media profile, which I then used, which I then leveraged, along with my Wall Street background and my financial experience and my ability to speak publicly, to speak at the next Bitcoin conference, and it was in Hong Kong, where my company happened to have an office, so it was like a work trip, and then I got to take one day off while in Hong Kong, go to attend this conference and speak. And that one speaking appearance kicked off my career as what eventually became known as an influencer, because at the time that word didn't exist. And I'm not a fan of that word, but I just don't have a better word to use.
Yeah.
That one speaking appearance in Hong Kong attracted Cointelegraph, which had just launched like a month or two prior, and they were looking for content creators. And I started writing a weekly series on Cointelegraph about trading and investing using Bitcoin as the asset. And that, again, that one speaking appearance led to several YouTube interviews, led to more speaking appearances. And that kind of kicked off my social media and my public appearance, and with that as the expertise. That led to me being a consistent guest on a YouTube channel called World Crypto Network. That led to me having my own show on the World Crypto Network. And in 2016, I came off the World Crypto Network to launch my own YouTube channel. And through all that time, I'm attending as many Bitcoin conferences as I can and speaking at these conferences. And people like to hear what I have to say, so my popularity is growing. And eventually in 2015, at the worst possible time, I quit my job at the bottom end of the bear market. So this is why, like, people think, like, oh, you've been in for so long, you have so much Bitcoin. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. Because I ended up quitting my job at the worst time in March of 2015. I had left my job. I made so many mistakes. We all made mistakes. My biggest mistake was I ended up resigning because I really hated, I didn't like it anymore. Instead of just being a bad employee and having them, fire me, because then I can collect unemployment-ish, So
they hadn't invented quiet quitting yet.
I know, I know. And so anyway, times were different. And I spoke at so many conferences, and there were things I didn't like about conferences. And that's when I decided to start my own. Also around 2016, I think, I kept using the word unconfiscatable. So this brings us to unconfiscatable, where this was the Bitcoin property that got me into Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It was that Cyprus banking confiscation. So whenever I talk about Bitcoin in all these interviews in 2015, 14, 15, 16, I always talk about this as a unique, independent property of Bitcoin. There is unconfiscatability, and then there is censorship-resistant value transfer. Completely independent. Being able to send your Bitcoin to somewhere else in the world, you can send it pretty cheaply, it gets there pretty quickly, it gets there somewhat anonymously if you know what you're doing. They're not perfect, but they're better than everything else we have. But unconfiscatability is different. Unconfiscatability allows you to store wealth in your head. No one has to know you even have it. It's too late for people like us, we're public people. But I always say, maybe it's better to just be an anonymous stacker. No one has to know you have it. You can store the password in your head. You can leave a bad situation in a bad country. Go to another country with all your wealth. And again, I come from a communist country, the Soviet Union. I was a little too young to remember it, but my family members reminded, they would talk about this over dinners. When we left the Soviet Union, my parents were also pretty frugal. It's not that we had a lot of money, but we sold everything we had because you're leaving the country, your passport is being surrendered. My parents have actually never gone back to Russia or any of the Soviet Union countries for that matter. Georgia, Ukraine, I'm half Russian, half Ukrainian. My parents have never been to any of those countries. My one side of the family, I used to spend summers in Latvia. It was all Soviet Union back then. It was all one country. And they've never went back. And they never planned on going back. Sell everything you have, and you're only allowed to leave the country with $100 per family member. And remember, you can't store wealth in your head. You know, they're checking everything. They're going through all your stuff. They're going through all your jewelry. And start your new life, $100 per family member. That's all you have. I mean, at the time, it buys you more, but still,
Yeah,
right?
still.
Right. Can you imagine, like, if you had to leave El Salvador and you were only allowed to leave with $500 to your name, can you start a new life? Or if you have a wife and kids, $2,000 for all of you. That's it. You go into a new country that you don't know the language of, and that's all the money you have, right? That's what my family had to do. So unconfiscatability is the most important property of Bitcoin, okay? Because you can get around sending your wealth somewhere else, but you cannot get around not being able to take it with you. And one of my fans, I guess, or one of my followers, reached out to me and said, Tone, do you know that since unconfiscatable is not a real word, the domain is just available for $12? And I immediately bought the domain, and I didn't know what to do with it for years. And then I got really frustrated with conferences. There weren't Bitcoin conferences. They were all altcoiny, shitcoins were taking over. We're talking 2017. It's the shitcoins everywhere.
And they could just print money, so they were
Right.
throwing sponsorship money at all the...
And that's the problem.
Yeah.
So being a public speaker, being a conference speaker for years, I learned something that most people that go to conferences don't realize. When you go to a conference, most people believe that the person standing on stage is an expert that was pre-selected to educate you. That's not what happens. At any conference, on any topic, anywhere in the world. The reality is 90% of speakers at all conferences are salesmen that paid to sell you something. That's just how it is. And I wanted to do different. I wanted to have a conference where being a sponsor did not guarantee you a speaker slot. Your speaker slot depended on your expertise that was approved by only me. And because I got the ball rolling a little slowly, like 3 or 4 Bitcoin-only conferences beat me to it. Honey Badger and BitBlock Boom came out right before Unconfiscatable did. But Unconfiscatable was also that Bitcoin-only conference. And I put up Unconfiscatable as a Bitcoin-only conference against any other Bitcoin-only conference. We were very low on sponsors, and the conference would lose me money every year. I also did a couple of other events, Understanding Bitcoin, and then I have a financial focused event, but I am exiting the conference. It's just so hard. So Unconfiscatable has now become a poker tournament only. So Unconfiscatable is rebranding from being a conference to just being a poker game. Either a poker game or a poker tournament, and I'll bring Unconfiscatable Poker to conferences. So we're here in El Salvador, and we got a couple of poker tables going, and we have our custom chips and everything. I don't have my banners yet for Unconfiscatable Poker, but that's kind of the new plan for Unconfiscatable because the brand is just too cool. The domain is cool. I don't want to give it up, so I need to do something with it. So now the next time we do it in Vegas, and Unconfiscatable is always a Las Vegas conference because of the poker side of it. And now it's just going to be a poker tournament. And since the Bitcoin conference is coming to Las Vegas, I'll do the poker tournament the day after the Bitcoin conference. So the Unconfiscatable brand will stay alive, but it's no longer a conference. It's now just a poker tournament. We also have the Scammy Awards, where we give out awards for scams of the year. Best new scam, scammer of the year, things like that.
So who were some notable winners of those awards?
You know, last year's 2022 Scammy Awards, which was in December, anything FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried just won across the board. And he had competitions, you know, Luna imploded, Mashinsky I was hoping would win something, but Sam Bankman-Fried, I mean, Richard Hart's been very popular, winner of multiple awards. We have the Peter Schiff Award for most clueless no-coiner. We have the Ripple Award for the most centralized, decentralized blockchain, things like that. This recent year, we had, what was it? Scammiest shitcoin on Bitcoin. You know, it's a battle between runes and ordinals and stamps and whatever Taproot Wizards are doing. They've already won a few. So it's fun. We have the Lifetime Scammer Achievement Award. We named it after John McAfee after he passed. I was really hoping the first year we did the scammies, we had the Lifetime Scammer Achievement Award. I was really hoping McAfee would win because for age reasons. He did not. I think, who beat him out that first year? It was either Craig Wright. I think it was Craig Wright. And I'm so happy that this past year, the guy I've been voting for the last 4 years finally won it, the Lifetime Scammer Achievement Award. That's Jeb McCaleb. He's always been my vote. Are you familiar with Jeb McCaleb?
I don't think so.
The original creator of Mt. Gox.
Okay.
Who sold it to Mark Arpellis with 80,000 missing Bitcoin. Also, the creator of the Ripple token. And when Ripple kicked him out for doing what he's been selling all the Ripple tokens, because when he created the Ripple token, he gave himself 33% of it. He then replicated it and created Stellar. So he's had but he's, you know, flies under the radar because he's not on camera much. And I think Vitalik's already won. I'm kind of disappointed in that. He's got a long lifetime to do more stuff.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff I do now. I have my financial channel under it's not really my brand. I kind of diversified it, Financial Summit brand, because during the pandemic, I was a big traveler. I was traveling. I spoke at like 40 conferences around the world in 2019. I think I went to like 30 plus countries in 2019. And then the pandemic hits. And that really alters my lifestyle. And I'm witnessing this, you know, totalitarian lockdown. And I went very political on my streams. I had a Bitcoin channel under my name, Tone Vays. And then I got very upset at the riots over BLM. I got very angry at the lockdowns. Then I got very angry over the vaccine mandates. Then the election irregularities of 2020. I'm going to be politically correct not to ban your channel the way mine was. And I was very vocal about the 2020 election. I attended the January 6th protests. I live streamed from there, and that got my channel banned for live streaming. I eventually got the channel banned, not the videos, not the recordings. And it was all labeled misinformation because they were live streams of what actually was happening is now misinformation. And that got me shadow banned on Twitter. That got me still shadow banned on YouTube. I'm actually still shadow banned on X. If you ever interview Elon Musk, please ask him to unshadow ban me on X. I remain shadow banned on X. And
which is so frustrating. You build something up, and then there's nothing you can do. It's
everyone makes fun of me. Tone, you have 300,000 followers on X, but your tweets get 8 likes. Haha, what? Those are fake followers. I'm like, no, those are real followers. You may want to look into a different direction as to why I get 8 likes. I've never paid for a single follower. That was organic growth. In 2017, I was getting 1,000 followers a day on my Twitter, and man, and my YouTube used to get 30,000 views a day. And then it all cratered. Once you're shadow banned, it destroys your business completely. People don't realize it. Once you're demonetized, once you shadow banned, demonetization is actually not even that bad. It's the shadow ban.
Yeah.
And YouTube, I don't care. Like, I don't even monetize my YouTube channel. I mean, YouTube monetization, it's okay. You make like $20 per 10,000 views or something like that. It's fine. I think my best year on YouTube, back when I was getting 20, 30,000 views per day on my daily streams, I think I made maybe $30,000, $40,000 that year from YouTube. I mean, we're not talking life-changing money here, right? But when 30,000 people watch you every day, you go into partnerships with advertisers yourself. You do ad reads, right? So YouTube demonetization is not the problem. They don't pay you much.
Yeah.
It's the shadow banning. It's not recommending your streams to people that need to be watching your streams. That's the problem with what they're doing. And because of my political takes on all that, then the Russia-Ukraine war breaks out. Being Russian, half Ukrainian, and being as vocal as I am, I had to say something. And it wasn't what the West wanted to hear. And then the whole Israel-Palestine situation happened. And again, I had to say something, being Jewish. And again, I'm not saying what the mainstream media wants to hear. And all of that adds up. So now my personal YouTube channel is my political channel. Those that don't want to hear my politics can follow the Financial Summit channel, where we don't talk any politics and we only talk about trading and investing. It focuses on Bitcoin, but it's a general trading and investing channel. I also still hold an event called the Financial Summit, which is a 5-day networking retreat for financial professionals, traders, money managers, hedge funds, financial services, very high end. The next one is in the Maldives. We've done.
And is it focused on Bitcoin, or is it just general finance?
It's general, but Bitcoin dominates just because that's my main following. Yeah. So Bitcoin dominates, but it's general. And it's basically how to make money in the markets. And it has a huge health and wellness component, which is my new big interest. I'm actually thinking of rebranding it to a health and wellness conference for financial professionals. Because if you're like at a 5-day like secluded retreat, everyone is qualified to be a speaker because it's only for 50 people. So you're better off having health and wellness presentations and discussing business and finance, because now you have to be, well, how come he's speaking and I'm not speaking? You know, everyone's speaking.
Yeah.
Right? So it's one of these. It's like everyone there is qualified to speak. The event is expensive since it's at places like Maldives, Bali, Dominican Republic, like super high-end resorts. Everyone gets their own villa, their own private pool. It's family friendly. So I like those kinds of retreats. You really get to know people. At big conferences, even like this, you meet someone, you talk to them for 20 minutes, you know, you exchange numbers, and then you have to come back and you have to remember who everybody was. Yeah. When you have small events of like 30, 40 people for like a week, it's like what, what's his name? The big motivator, Tony Robbins. It's like what Tony Robbins does, right? Not the big ones of 5,000, 10,000 people, his retreats for like CEOs, right? It's like 20, 30 people only. It's that kind of style.
Yeah, I mean, those just a whole different experience. You get to know people, you know their backstory, you develop those lifelong friendships.
So many people from these events have already started businesses together. Like people have altered other people's businesses based on these, you know, 2-day discussions. I know I have it in my testimonials where my friend, his name is Mike Jarmuz, Lightning Ventures. I don't know if you're familiar with him. The way he used to make money is he would invest in the late stage startups. Well, what is that? That's when you invest between round C and IPO. You invest there and you're like a year or two away from the IPO, and you're just looking to double your money. If you're lucky, you triple your money because you're getting in with an established company with a path to an IPO. And well, why would people sell if you know you're going to double or triple your money at that point? And it's like, yeah, but some of these people that are selling, they've been there since round A.
They got other plans with their lives.
Like they're up 20, 30x.
Yeah.
Like they don't care for another doubling or tripling, right? But what he was doing was he was getting in, like he was invested in like 100 companies. They're all going IPO, invest like 10,000 here, 20,000 here, you know, and everything is like slowly doubling over a year or two. And then he's at this event, and it's in the testimonial, spends like 2 days talking to another guy who's like, no, what are you doing? You're doing it all wrong. You have to get in round A. You got to get in round B. You know, alters his business, and now he has his own fund. And this is what he's doing. He's funding Bitcoin startup companies. And this is what happens when you get to spend a couple of days with the right people.
No, I love that. So this is your second time or third time here in El Salvador?
Third or fourth, definitely minimum third time in El Salvador, first time at the conference.
Okay. And last year you went, I believe you went to Prospera after.
I did go to Prospera after. That was my first time going to Prospera ZEDE in Rotan. So this was after the having party in April. That was my first time going to Prospera. This is November. And on Monday, it will be my fourth time going to Prospera.
So I would love you to give people your opinion on what's happening in Prospera. I have not been there yet. I am a citizen or a resident
of Prospera,
but I haven't yet been there. So I'd love to hear your take on what they're doing. I know recently they've been battling the government there.
Oh boy. So I have multiple. So I think, okay, how do I do this without being too Bitcoin? When I properly learned about Bitcoin, it changed my life. It altered my life. Within 2 years of, I mean, we're not going back to 2011, right? So since the Cyprus banking confiscation, when I took Bitcoin seriously, exactly 2 years later, literally almost to the day, I quit my Wall Street job and went all in on Bitcoin. The reason I did that is I was confident. I hedged my bets, right? It's not because I was wealthy in Bitcoin at all. I was confident in myself, and when I quit my Wall Street job, I had 4 or 5 avenues of how I was going to pay my bills. I opened a physical business. It was a massage therapy office. I went into partnership with my massage therapist. I may not look it right now, but I used to be pretty athletic. I used to do like CrossFit every day, and I used to play sports. I was a volleyball player for like 20 years since high school, and played some baseball as well. So I decided to open a physical business. I always wanted to quit my job and be a trader on my own. For the first 7 years of Wall Street, I wasn't allowed to trade. Because I was working for Bear Stearns and then JP Morgan, these big financial institutions, and the line of business I was in, I had access to databases of hedge fund positions. So it was illegal for me to trade.
So even on your own
Even
funds,
on my own.
Okay.
No, I'm prohibited from trading.
Okay.
I can trade in very limited capacity. I could trade in a monitored account where I need to get approval on any trade I make from the compliance department, and I'm not allowed to sell the position for 30 days unless I'm losing over 20%. Then they let me sell, right? So that's not a good way to trade, right?
Yeah.
So in my very last job on Wall Street, I literally quit my job with the big banks and went to a smaller company, took a pay cut to go to a smaller company, because at that company, we weren't analyzing hedge fund position risk in-house. At that company, we were building risk models and selling the risk model service. So at that company, I had no insider information. I had no access to hedge fund positions, because they would run our models in-house over there. And that job had no trading restrictions. And that's when I started trading properly for the first time in my last 3 years of my last company. But then it's like you have a job and you're trading, and I'm sitting there in meetings with my cell phone under the table, you know? And I just wanted to quit and trade in peace. So this is how I was risk averse myself. I had a physical business that I opened, full-time trading. I started this YouTube and public speaking career. Plus, you know, Bitcoin itself. Okay, these were my 4 things that I was going to be doing. And mostly it was the 3 for money, right? It was going to be physical business, public speaking, and trading investing. Bitcoin and traditional markets. Mostly I trade traditional markets. I'm an options trader. And I was hoping all 3 would work out, but the physical business was a disaster. I still own half of it. It never made me any money. It was always like barely surviving, but I'm not a quitter. And I had to, at the worst time, I have no job, I have no fiat money coming in. You want to be buying Bitcoin, I am not making any money. I'm trading, so I can't sell down those profits. I'm building up my trading portfolio. I have to keep the physical business alive. Public speaking doesn't pay. My YouTube channel hasn't grown to make any revenue yet. And I'm literally at the depths of the bear market. I gotta sell Bitcoin to support the physical business, right? But out of the 3 things, my trading was doing pretty well. The physical business was not. But I loved traveling and public speaking. Again, other than migrating from Russia to America through 3 countries and taking road trips to Canada for my geology degree and spending time in asbestos mines, I never left the United States from the age of 10. Again, road trips to asbestos mines in Canada doesn't count. I never left the country. I'm from when I came to America in 1990 until my very first vacation, I think in 2008 or 2009. And I went on vacation one time. I left the country. I went to Carnival in Trinidad. And then the following year, I left the country for the second time. I went to the Philippines, again on vacation. There were girls involved, based on who you're dating. Let's go to your, home country. And that was it. So, and then I got the Wall Street job, and then I'm working, I'm saving money, buying a place. I never traveled. I did not travel at all. And then when I quit, and then I went to Hong Kong before I quit my job, like the year before. And then I'm like, wow, this is great. And when I quit my job and I started public speaking, started traveling. And I loved it. So not much time to trade when you're always traveling, doing interviews, public speaking. So then I'm okay, so how am I going to pay my bills? So I started traveling, speaking at conferences that don't pay you to do that. And I started teaching workshops, teaching people how to trade. So I would go to a conference like this in El Salvador. Mm-hmm. And on a Saturday, I would rent out a co-working space. And I would advertise on my YouTube channel and on my website. And I would charge like $500 to $1,000 for people to spend all day with a boot camp, a one-day boot camp on how to trade. And that's how I would be financing my life for a couple of years, teaching people how to be traders while running my YouTube channel. And my YouTube channel had trading content. It had a legal show on Bitcoin legal status. It had a tech show. And I think my biggest contribution to Bitcoin was in 2017 when me and Jimmy Song and I were navigating people through the fork wars, basically. And so that's what I was doing. Then I started the conferences. And now I'm stepping back from the conferences. You kind of get tired. You get bored. Yeah. I still like to travel, but I've taken a break from travel. Now I mostly live around Latin America. Panama, I like Rotan. So how do we get to Rotan? I was completely off topic. So when I discovered Bitcoin, the reason why I quit my job 2 years after I discovered Bitcoin was because I felt that Bitcoin was too important to fail. And I felt that I can do my part and I can help Bitcoin succeed. And I think I've contributed to that movement all throughout 2016 and 17, especially during those fork wars. And people still to this day Most of the time, people recognize me because, again, because of my shadow bans. Many people watching me right now probably didn't know who I am, and that's because I've been shadow banned for years, and my YouTube channel now gets a few thousand views instead of 30,000 that it was getting. Today, it probably would be getting 100,000 views a day if I never got banned and shut down. But it's okay. We adapt and we move on. Not the first time for me with all my career changes. Being a high school earth science teacher, and then going to Wall Street. But my Wall Street was, I did a master's in financial engineering because I wanted to make money. So I quit high school teaching, went to get a master's in financial engineering, which is a very hard degree, math, programming, computer science. But again, you persevere, you work your way through it. So I thought Bitcoin was too important to the world to fail. And I wanted to do everything I could to help it succeed. When I got to Prospera after the last time I saw you, and I spent 3-4 days there, I felt that Prospera ZEDE was too important to the world to fail.
And maybe explain to people who aren't aware of Prospera just a...
So the reason why is because Prospera ZEDE was the first private city being built. It was the first city to be run by a corporation. And a lot of people see it as evil, and there is a lot of propaganda why this is so evil. But this was a first attempt to build a private city. And they had a zone on the island of Rotan. They still have this zone. It's written into the Honduran constitution. It was written into the Constitution 8 years ago that they allow for this ZEDE zone. ZEDE stands for Zone for Economic Development and Employment. In Spanish, the words are switched a little bit, but only the Honduran criminal laws apply to the ZEDE zone. Criminal laws like they can't make murder legal, they can't make drugs legal. Those are criminal laws. Non-criminal laws are at full discretion of the manager of the ZEDE. In this particular ZEDE, the manager is a company called Prospera, and the city is also called Prospera. So, which happens to be an American corporation for legal reasons. As much as people hate American corporations have very good legal protections. Yeah. That's why a lot of companies want to be American corporations. Companies don't want to be American corporations for some legal reasons and for some tax reasons, but sometimes an American corporation makes sense. I am still incorporated. My company is also an American company. I have an American LLC for tax reasons because it's better for me, for my tax advantages, it's better to still have an American company. Maybe in the future, it won't make sense. But with the Trump administration coming in, it may make more sense. It really depends on each person's individual situation. So they were building a city, the first private city in the world. And the city itself, not the federal government, sets all laws that are not criminal. Tax laws, health laws, building code laws, all laws. This was going to be the lowest reasonable tax zone in the world. It wasn't going to be a zero tax zone, but it was going to be a 5% tax zone and 1% on corporate taxes. Like corporate taxes 1%, personal taxes are 5%. And that has huge advantages. Everyone is like, oh, I'd rather be zero tax. I can get a Caribbean passport. I can go live in Dubai. Yes, you can live on a zero tax system, but that also comes with its own problems. And I discussed this with the founders of Prospera ZEDE in my podcast with them. So there are 2 interviews on my personal YouTube channel with the CEO of Prospera and one of the founders of Prospera. And the founder is a big Bitcoin maxi, a silent one, but he does interviews now because he's the president of Prospera, the city. And if this city succeeds, it paves the way for how a city could be built on minimum taxes, where every service provided by those taxes is actually there for you and not for the benefit of some government bureaucrat. Everyone in that city could be replaced because it's run like a company. Everybody can be fired. The taxes are mostly voluntary, and these taxes are there. You're going to want to pay them. And you're not forced to live there.
Yeah.
And all the time I spent there and everything I learned about it, I felt that a city like this, it needs to show to the world how much better life could be if more of these private cities existed. And that's why I've been there. This is my 4th time going there. It's also a beautiful island. Even if this Prospera ZEDE did not exist on the island of Roatan, it would still be my #1 vacation place in the Caribbean. I'm getting my diving certificate now when I go there. I went diving for the first time. The last time I went, never went diving before, only did snorkeling. Diving, again, my new favorite hobby. Absolutely incredible.
They have a dive shop there run by a Bitcoiner.
Prospera ZEDE made Bitcoin legal tender actually before El Salvador. It just didn't have the publicity. You can have Bitcoin as unit of account there. They're trying to get the entire island to accept Bitcoin. They're doing a great job. The coolest looking Bitcoin center is in at the top of at the highest point on the island. It's just such a cool island, great place. People are nice, and they were building the city. Everything in that city functions on Bitcoin as well. And a few months ago, the current government of El Salvador, which is a very left-leaning government.
You mean of Honduras?
Of Honduras, my bad. The court ruled that 8 years ago, it was unconstitutional to add these ZEDEs into the Constitution. And the point of these ZEDEs was to bring the concept of Dubai, Hong Kong, Singapore. The ZEDE is trying to create a Dubai in a country like Honduras, which at the moment is the 5th most dangerous country in the world by murder per capita, if we exclude Caribbean islands like St. Lucia and the Bahamas. These statistics need to be adjusted for reality, you know, and proper population. So Honduras, it was like El Salvador before Bukele.
Yeah. Well, they used to go back and forth between who had the highest murder rate in the world. One year is El Salvador, next year is Honduras.
Right.
They would switch back and forth.
And Roatan Island is pretty safe compared to mainland Honduras.
Yeah.
But there is a ZEDE zone inside the mainland of Honduras. It is the safest place for anyone to live because it's a private city with private security. And it's like the ultimate gated community because it's a gated city. And this is where, and it's super cheap to live there because they don't have the federal government bureaucracy. And these ZEDE zones were going to change Honduras for the better. As they grow, they would have made Honduras safe. They could make Honduras prosperous. But the current government of Honduras demonized these zones as foreigners coming to take your land.
Yeah, they're colonizers.
Colonizing your land. And the ZEDE on the mainland was created by a Honduran. Had no, foreigners there at all. It was created by a Honduran for Hondurans. And they still managed to demonize it as foreigners coming to take away your land. And it's so unfortunate. Now, the Supreme Court ruled that these ZEDEs were created unconstitutionally, even though they ratified the Constitution to create them, and the prior president wanted a capitalist, it's a test run. Yeah. Even communist China had Shenzhen, where capitalism was happening all throughout. It was an experiment. It was communist China, like, hey, let's just see what happens in this one city. Let's just let them do whatever they want. And that was the booming zone in China that probably changed China. It was that zone, like they were able to see capitalism while they were running a communist system. And this was the effort in Honduras. And they demonized it so much that even it's so disappointing that even YouTube channels like The Gray Zone, which is usually so good at identifying the right side of an issue, even they screwed up and demonized these ZEDE zones, going with what the government of Honduras claims that they are. So it's unfortunate. Now, the Supreme Court ruled that these ZEDEs are unconstitutional, but they haven't really done anything other than the publicity that these zones are unconstitutional. So unfortunately, this hurts potential investment. This is going to scare a lot of people, but there is still a chance that legally these zones are still okay, and we'll see what happens in the next Honduran election.
I've heard they've kind of they were pushing hard on it, but after Trump won, that they've kind of paused because there's some fear that because that the Trump administration will not look favorably on the way that they're going about and doing this. So hopefully that slows them down.
In the nicest way to put it, I have a very pro-capitalist platform, and I'm a very pro-capitalist views. I tend not to talk too much about the countries I spend a lot of time in. It's kind of like, I don't know if we can curse, but there's a statement in the US, don't S where you eat.
Yeah.
Basically, I mostly live in Panama. I rarely talk about the politics of Panama, but I talk about the politics of the US all the time. Well, two reasons. One, the US still has some elements of free speech, especially with the current administration coming in. So I can badmouth the US while living in the US. And since I don't live in the US, it makes it easier for me to badmouth the US. But I have less bad things to say about it today than I did a few weeks ago, let's say. And even though there are a lot of things that Trump is going to do that I'm going to very disagree with, but we'll see. But in general, I'm hoping that Honduras becomes more capitalistic and it follows what El Salvador is doing, because and there's the other thing. I'm also, a lot of people are coming to El Salvador. This is why I wanted to go and help Prospera. El Salvador has enough. It can always use more, I guess.
But it's got enough its own momentum. It's got its own momentum going already.
You have Max Keiser. But Prospera doesn't have a Max Keiser.
Yeah.
And in order to make sure a place like Prospera wasn't going to get scammy with shitcoiny, I was really looking forward to moving there and becoming that voice, kind of like what I did for Bitcoin back in the early days of 2014 and 15, having probably one of the most popular YouTube channels at the time, educating about Bitcoin. I wanted to do that with the Prospera ZEDE, which would have been a big, and making sure that it stays a Bitcoin city and doesn't become shitcoiny.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a big contingent of people that are going after this conference that are going to spend some time in Prospera.
I hope so. A few people are going, but yeah, you should interview. There's a couple of people from Prospera here. Dushan, who runs the Bitcoin Center.
I've had him on the show.
You've had him on the show. Excellent.
Yeah, he's great.
Great guy. Same thing. Dushan, he came from Slovakia.
Yeah.
And he showed up. He's like, oh my God, I love it. I'm going to move here. What can I do? And they're like, well, we have this awesome building at the top of the mountain. He's like, okay, great. I will make this a Bitcoin center. Same thing with Emilio, who runs the scuba shop. He's a scuba diving instructor. And he's like, oh my God, this is awesome. I want to move here. What can I do? I'm going to open a Bitcoin scuba shop. It's called Bitcoin Scuba. So many people, there's a couple of Canadians there. People just come, they love it, and they're like, okay, I want to help the city grow. And that's what I wanted to do as well. So we'll see if I'm still on that path. I want to open my little tequila bar. I'm ready to just retire, open a little bar restaurant on the beach, and enjoy my new scuba diving hobby.
Nice. Well, I think that's a good note to wrap up on. But make sure people know where they can follow you on Twitter, where they can follow your shows.
Sure.
Where they can get involved with the poker tournaments.
Yeah, no, everything is Tone Vays, just my name. I'm sure you'll flash my name somewhere.
Yeah.
Tone Vays, Tone, first name, last name, Vays. You can also find my financial content on the Financial Summit brand. So you can just Google the Financial Summit on YouTube or on the web. You find the conference in the Maldives. It's not even a conference, a networking retreat in the Maldives. and also our financial channel where we talk about the price of Bitcoin every morning on weekdays. And my view on Bitcoin, that's what most people ask me, where do you think the price is going to do? And I really think we temporarily topped right here, right now. I think for the next few weeks, we're going to get stuck in this $80,000 range. Yes, we can pop into the 90s. We already did. We can pop into the 90s again. Yes, we can slide into the 70s. I don't think we're going to go lower than 72 anytime soon. Maybe never. I also don't think we're going to go over 100,000 anytime very soon. But my view is 100,000 will break next year, not this year. It's very possible we can break it tomorrow. Not trading advice. I am setting up, I'm taking profit. I've already taken some profit this week. I might take a little more profit next week off my positions. I think for the next few weeks, we're going to tread water, maybe slide down a smidge. And then we're going to have a push above 100K in December into next year. That's my trading plan at the moment. Things can change any minute, but that's my current plan. I've been very bullish on Bitcoin. The first half of the year, when we started to go down from April into August, if you go back to those videos, I just kept saying, wait till October. Just hang in there till October. I expected the bull market to start in October. We're actually even a little bit higher than I expected us at this time, but I expected the bull market to resume in October and continue all the way through at least the summer of next year. So I am looking for 150,000 and above, but these are my views on the price of Bitcoin.
Okay. Yeah, we don't talk about price a lot on this channel, but since you're mentioning it, so you think it'll top around 150?
I don't really have a top.
Yeah.
It can top anywhere. That's my current trading plan. Like I said, I'm taking profit now. I will be back in the market before the year is over. And I'm not taking all my profit, of course. These are just trading positions. I trade with about 10%. That's 10, 20% is what you're, if you're a trader, you should only trade with 10 to 20% of your, stash, whether it's traditional markets or Bitcoin, doesn't matter. And that's kind of my plan, get back into the markets later this year. And I'm still expecting the bull market to continue. But for details on this, follow the Financial Summit.
Sweet. And on Twitter, Tone Vays?
Tone Vays and the Financial Summit as well.
Okay.
I think it's Fin Summit on Twitter. Too many letters. Financial Summit. Someone had the Financial Summit from like 10 years ago, but the Financial Summit was too long for Twitter.
Yeah. And then when's the poker tournament here?
It's not a tournament, but we are going to be playing poker starting in about 30 minutes.
Okay.
I don't know if this is going out live.
No, it'll be after. But just for future, at most of the Bitcoin conferences,
we'll see. If I'm there, there'll be poker involved,
okay.
And it's legal. If I'm there and it's legal, which is anywhere in Latin America, poker is legal. When it's Dubai, it's a little bit different. But yeah, there'll be some poker involved, either a cash game or a tournament. Here's just a cash game. People come in with sats. Not a lot. We're doing 1,000 sat blinds. Low price here, like it's about $1, less than $1. So like 100,000 sat buy-in, $80 right now, $90. And yeah, play as long as you like, and then cash out.
Perfect. Awesome.
Back into sats.
Well, I'm glad we were able to make it happen this time, and I'm sure you'll be back here in El Salvador.
Awesome. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom.